I think we need to talk about some major free agent signings from last week.
Yeah, the rest of the big names are pretty much off the board.
Yeah, we've kind of gotten to the point we were all anticipating a massive influx of free agent signings over a 24-hour period as soon as the lockout ended, but that kind of dragged down for a couple of weeks. But everything's kind of settling into place finally now. The major piece of the puzzle is Carlos Correa, rumored to be with the Cubs at one point. Of course, the famous brunch meeting with AJ Hinch and Carlos Correa to get him to go to the Tigers.
I have
He
a
landed.
question. Is there going to be an episode where we don't hear about the AJ Hinch brunch?
I'm gonna try and find a way to bring up the brunch, or at least a brunch. I'll drop in a brunch
Okay.
reference in every episode, at least up to episode 100. We're
Okay.
5 away after this one, so
Well,
stay
thank
tuned
God.
for that.
There's an end in sight.
We'll see. Maybe I'll figure out a way to carry it on from there. But yeah, I mean, I could have seen him landing with either of my teams. I don't think anyone in the world saw him landing with the Minnesota Twins.
No.
The world was in an uproar as the announcement was made at 2 a.m. Saturday morning, Friday morning, Sunday morning. I forget. It was 2 a.m. I know
Yeah,
was when
it was overnight.
the announcement came out. You woke up the next morning like, what the fuck? The fucking weird ass Twins. That's as CC Sabathia famously called them on his podcast one time. I love the idea that the Twins have a reputation just for being a fucking weird ass organization. They do things strangely, but you could add this one to the list. It's a 3-year deal, 105 million. It's not.
It's a 1 year deal. Yeah.
It's a 1-year deal because he can
Like
opt out after the first. Yes, and we brought this up last episode. Certainly did not bring up the Twins being a potential suitor there or a landing spot. This actually, and we could have. I didn't connect the dots, but when they made that crazy wacky deal with the Yankees and moved Josh Donaldson to the Yankees picked up his $50 million left on his contract. So they had a huge open space in their budget. The Twins did. So it makes sense where they could drop in, make this kind of unorthodox deal and drop in a big name player for big money. And it doesn't affect their budget because they had already budgeted that money. They didn't know that trade was going to be made or that the Yankees were going to pick up all of Donaldson's salary. So that side of it makes sense in hindsight. I've heard people speculate that the Twins are simply doing this, hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. I'm not sure their roster is built to contend this year, but it makes it a little more interesting for sure. Having Carlos Correa there. If that doesn't work though, they could trade him, considering he can opt out. He's essentially a free agent after this year, so
Right.
he'd be a perfect trade deadline candidate. So maybe they could load up on prospects. They'll pay him $35 million this year, load up on, trade him and load up on prospects. So essentially they're paying for the privilege of potentially getting prospects, $35 million. Do you think it changes the balance of power necessarily in the AL Central? That's the real question.
Well, I mean, Carlos Correa doesn't fix everything for them. So
No.
seeing as they have pitching issues to begin with and bullpen issues, they won't probably have issues hitting home runs again, which they've been doing year in and year out. It's just that they have so many issues elsewhere that won't be enough. I mean, bringing Gary Sanchez in, that's in that ballpark, you're probably looking at 30 home runs from him. Who knows what you'll get out of Correa, probably somewhere around the same number. So, offensively, they're probably very sound. I mean, do I like the idea of Carlos Correa being in the AL Central? No, not at all. But I don't know. I don't know if like all of a sudden you're like, oh, the Twins are going to win the division, because I don't think that's the case. So.
Was that a weird ass Twins fan voice
yes.
right there? I like that.
Now they're making moves. I mean, Gary Sanchez may hit 30 home runs, but he's also going to bat about 220 for you. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all or nothing. And then who was the other? They also got who'd they get in that Yankees trade? Gio Urshela or whatever.
Yeah, Urshela, I think.
Urshela, yeah. And it's like, all right. I mean, he's been like, the Yankees are probably happy to get rid of that because he's never materialized what he should be. So, I mean,
Yeah, we didn't really break down that trade very much. It's a little more interesting in context now because I compared it to confusing activity with accomplishment. They just sort of moved some pieces around, but they moved some pieces around and then were able to add Correa, which makes it a little more interesting. I think it comes down to, as always, everything comes down to pitching. They can add all the offense they want, but it's what their rotation is capable of in their bullpen. So I think it doesn't threaten the White Sox as the favorites. I think it threatens the Tigers as we're kind of the in vogue pick to be the second place team in the AL Central. I think that kind of puts them on even par potentially. I think that might be the more realistic way to look at it rather than White Sox fans need to be very nervous about it. But the other interesting thing I think of with Correa is I guess injury history. It's a little unfair, but he doesn't play 162 games ever. He doesn't
No,
play hardly over 100 games ever. So you combine that with their other marquee player, Byron Buxton, who has the same affliction. He's an incredible player, but he's just not on the field for enough games. They're
you
two
also
main players.
throw Gary Sanchez
Yeah,
in on that mix. I
yeah,
mean, you've got three guys who won't ever probably be out there at the same time,
yeah.
except for the beginning of the season.
They're supposed to three guys that are supposed to carry the team that might not even be there. So
Yeah,
there's potential high risk, high reward for the Twins. So I think that's another reason we can not be too concerned. But as our favorite teams reside in the AL Central, but we'll see. We'll never know until they play the games, I guess.
Word Hole Media.